things are moving a bit faster, I think, at this stage in the day. It's been a long day, Joan. How are you doing?
Okay, feeling a bit tired.
Aye.
And I've been at space, but yeah.
But John, you've been working the wording with your counterpart, because in the last meeting, what came out of it was that while money is important, money is not everything, and it was really the whole reputational thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to know that progress is being made on the wording, and you're working towards something that might be acceptable to the CDE and to you, Joan. So I'm going to assume that that's going to work, and I think with a fair wind and skill on the part of John and his counterpart, then that wording should come through. Obviously, nothing is finalised until it's all finalised, and you're not bound by anything. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Until everything is as you find it acceptable, and everybody feels on all sides that they're happy, and then your lawyers will draw up an agreement, and you'll be invited to sign that. So do remember, nothing is binding, nothing is final until we get to the stage where you're content with everything that's been agreed. However, we are making progress.
Good.
I say we are making, you are making progress. I'm going to be very careful, I'm just here to help you, alright? But of course, I want to encourage you. So what I'd like to do now is to talk about the money claim, because we did talk about that in some detail when we did our analysis of what would happen if you go to court. And I think John was very frank with you about the reality of the value of the claim. And I suppose what I'd like to do now is to get down to brass tacks on that. And I want to try to find a way to help you to receive as much as the CDA is willing and able to pay. But similarly, of course, if I was in their room, I know that they really want to get to a stage where they find a figure which is the lowest amount you were prepared to take, and that's the reality of it. So I want to at least give you the opportunity to know how far they can go and make a decision about that. However, as we've discussed previously, you have to be realistic about this. I mean, that's why we've had the discussions that we've had. We know that, as do they, and there are all sorts of things going on. So I think what I would be interested, Joan, in knowing is, what do you need? So in money terms, what's in your mind as you think about whatever sum of money might be available today?
Well, my claim initially is £250,000, which was what I would have earned over the term of the contract. I am prepared to move down from that, but I haven't been able to work, I haven't been earning. I need to be compensated for that, and I do feel I deserve something for the pain, grief and stress that they have caused me.
If you get a sum of money, Joan, what will you do with it?
Well, there's I'm out of pocket here. I've got Rebecca's expenses to pay, and my lost income, and then I'm taking the family to the Bahamas next month. So yeah, and they need that. John, you know, it's been a really tough time for us all. We need that period away.
Do I get to come?
Well, we've got some other things to resolve, I think, Rebecca, just about the advice, but we'll come to that.
Have you actually paid Rebecca the costs that she is, that you?
No, we've not really. We're good friends, John, so we'll sort that out in due course. There's 1 or 2 points just about the things that you've revealed about the likely.
I see. Well, I don't want to intrude on your.
We'll take that away separately, I think.
I mean, broadly speaking, when you have that conversation, have you any sense of what that amount might be if you need to recover? I mean, do you want to have a private chat about that?
Yes, we'll just.
Okay, blah 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 blah. Yeah. So, where have you got to? Because I can obviously see that if you're out of pocket, you want to get some of all that back if you can.
That's right.
So, where have you got?
So we're talking about 7,000 to 10,000 in fees, I think, at the moment.
Yeah.
And my lost income is about 25,000, I think, over the period here.
Okay.
And pension.
Of course, yes.
Pension.
Yeah, very good points.
Chauffeur.
Yeah.
You
Chauffeur
had a
would
lot
have been
of,
handy.
you had a lot of
Absolutely.
things promised.
That's what the question I would have is, how realistic is it for you to expect that the CDA will pay for that lost income, what might be what might they be thinking about that figure of 25,000? Do you think? If you were on their side, I suppose I'd ask you, Francesca, also the question. If you're advising on their side, why might they find that difficult? Is really the question.
I think you meant to say 125,000.
No, she didn't. It's not in the instructions.
I think that would be reasonable. We had a contract. We had a contract. Yeah, that's what it was going to be.
So let's assume they can't do that,
Okay.
or they won't do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And remember, we looked at what the
Indeed,
alternative.
I definitely don't want to go down the
No. So
4 years and the, yeah.
So what you're trying to do is to find something that's workable financially for you.
Yeah.
Given that you're going to get a wording, hopefully, that's
Yeah.
going to be appropriate.
Yeah.
And you did say yesterday that it's not really about the money.
Yes,
And I recognise that there's
Yeah.
something about the symbolic
yes,
nature of
Yeah.
that. So I just want to get a sense, I suppose, of what you need.
yes. So, one of the things that I'm absolutely passionate about the countryside, and I've got lots of charitable interests here, and Rebecca helps me make proper charitable donations. So, if there was something that perhaps part of that 25,000 might be a charitable donation, and I know that the CDA do lots of good work, you know, if there's something to do with schools or, you know, and my partner, he's really passionate about trees, and you know, so if there was something there, that might be a package of things that I could look at.
Would that enable you to turn over a new leaf, do you think? Yeah, so what I'm hearing, what I'm hearing from you, Joan, is that £7,000 of legal expenses, and,
Yeah.
and that is something you will need to pay to Rebecca, however constant her advice has been. And secondly, there's a sum, and you've got the figure 25,000. However, what I'm hearing is a strong commitment to the countryside, and if something could be done around about that.
There might be something in the charitable space.
Yeah,
I like to make a
that's
lot of
quite
charitable
creative, yeah.
donations, and you know, I think that could work for the
That's
CDA. You know, they do. You know, they work a lot with communities and the schools. There might be something. Might be some nice publicity out of it. I mean, as Rebecca's got a friend at the Daily Mail, and we're quite keen to.
Isn't that interesting? We were talking about the
Yes.
Daily Mail the other day,
Yes.
earlier on today, in you know, as a kind of a tool that you would use of hostility, and yet, what you've now got is the possibility of something that can be mutually advantageous.
Yeah.
And something to really think about, Rebecca, as well as the wording of the acknowledgement. And I think we're reframing that now from, I think you've recognised that public apologies is not necessarily the way. There's a way of doing this that might work for both parties. How about bringing into that the idea of some sort of a press announcement about something you've agreed to do in the charitable field? Now there's me making a suggestion, not really for me to do that, but can I just plant that seed and leave it with you
Yeah.
just to think about?
I'd be happy with that. And actually, if I would be prepared to come and do some staff training for the CDA as well as part of the
Interesting.
package of things. So if they were giving me proper recompense here and that acknowledgement of what had gone awry, and there was a joint thing we could do, perhaps part of the announcement could be that I would be
Okay, well, that's
offering training to them.
really helpful, and actually, you know, I probably would want to be together and have the conversation about that. And I don't think that's something that I want to get. It's not for me to be the messenger of back and forth. Can I just thank you? And I'm going to be very frank with you. I'm not looking at the moment for a specific figure. What I'm trying to do is get a sense of where you are and what you're thinking, what all the different dynamics are in your mind at the moment. And I won't be taking any of this back. The most I might do is give an impression that you have, if I may, legal expenses. In
Yes.
fact, maybe I will ask for this specifically, of £7,000 to £10,000. And my impression is that you have further expectations, and I think you move very far from where you were early on today, which was on 125 or 250 or whatever. However, you are looking for something to recognise the impact of this on you.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing is that that's in the 5 figures, not the 4 figures. I mean, the question I suppose for me and for you is can I go as far as say I'm hearing that it might take something beginning with a 2 rather than a 1 to deal with that. I mean, I'm pushing the boat out here, and I'm being very frank, and I'm revealing my negotiation approach to you, but I'm not going to have a particular figure in mind. I don't know where they are just now.
No. So I think if you get a sense, John, that that's the sort of territory that they would be in, then you could, I would be happy for you to reveal that, but I don't want you going in saying it's all over, guys, you just sign here and we're away. And for me it's about reputation. I was really clear with you that it's, so if there's a package there that shows we're coming out of this and everybody's got their reputation intact and even enhanced, then that's important to me.
And that's why the wording and thinking about how that might be made public and in what context is really crucial, isn't it?
And if there is a way of them recognising an ongoing value that I have for them, you know, then that can be part of that as well.
So, absolutely clearly, Joan, I will not be going in and saying, here is what I have got for. I think I'm just working with just now is I'll go on and listen to all they have to say. It may be appropriate for me just to mention towards the end of that conversation my sense of where you might be.
Yes.
And it's really no more than that. We're not talking about specific figures because that could end up being polarising. I need to get a sense of whether they can do anything like what you're talking about on the money side. I may have to come back to you and say that they can't even do that, so, or won't even do that for whatever reason. However,
I think that's getting close to my bottom line though, John, you know, so.
And I always say to folk, be very careful about having a bottom line, because who knows, you know, what might yet happen in this. And you yourself are showing the creativity that allows you to be flexible. But I hear what you're saying. All right, we'll leave it for now. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, good to see you. And I know it's getting on in the day, but I sense that progress is being made. Emma, I understand that you've been talking with the other side's lawyer, Francesca.
I did, I did.
Francis, and am I right to understand that you're beginning to get a wording that might work for both parties on the recognition of what happened?
I think we are getting there. I've got a bit more work to do, but I think we're getting closer.
Well, we're in parallel tracks here, parallel lines if you like. We're working with at least 2 ideas at once. One is how to address the reputational side, and I'll be very frank with you, as indeed was Joan earlier on, that the reputational side is really important. And whatever you can do, and however far you can go with your wording, then there will be a benefit in doing that. And the irony here is that the more you can do with that, the less significant the money side, I suspect, will be. And that's often the way in these negotiations, that money is a substitute for something else. And I don't think I'm reaching any confidence because she said so directly in an earlier joint meeting, for Joan, Joanna, this reputational thing is really important. And as you said for yourself.
That sounds really positive, actually.
Well, the ball's in your court, and I can only say these things. You've got to work, and that's where the lawyer's role is really important, if I may say so, as well as helping you, William. Is that right? William Booth. Wilma. Yes, of course.
Just call me Will, it's fine.
Will. Or Parky even.
Old boot is Petra likes to call me.
Well, if you're talking about, we're not talking about boots. I mean, I'd like to put you in yellow shoes if I may. It's getting to the end of the course, isn't it? So let's talk about the money side, because as you know, Joanne has a money claim, and for all I've just said, that will be perhaps less significant the more able you are to do what you can on reputation and so forth. There is still a money claim. And what I'd like to discuss with you now is where you could go on. And I can see in your face already, Roman, that that's not easy.
Totally limited on that. We're talking about public funds here. It's not that we can just be seen to be paying off the claim.
It's already in the public domain. There's scrutiny, journalists are all over you like a rash.
That's the thing, but you know, just
audit committee
She's
coming up.
loaded anyways.
You know,
What
this
committee?
audit committee.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we're very mindful of that, you know, we just cannot be seen to be throwing money at this. But, you know, we have obviously come far already today in a bit of reality testing. There is a claim which we have to defend, and there's a cost implication of that, so we're not totally unrealistic about it, but I think really, John, you need to know that there's not a big pot of gold
No,
here.
it's not. I mean, maybe legal costs, but I mean, she'll go hee-haw if she
Well,
wants.
of course you put your costs.
She wants a big.
Well, do you remember that earlier on we did the analysis on the flip chart and you faced the prospect of the cost that you will incur if you go to court? And do you remember that? That's your benchmark. That's the reality of what will happen if you don't sort this out. And my recollection is, even if you win, and I think Emma just said there's a risk, even if you win, you'll still have unrecoverable costs. And I think we were at 25, 30,000, whatever it was. So do keep that as your rational benchmark in mind.
True, but
And
we're
you know,
just
we've done our
defending it,
we've done our kind of cost flow analysis, so you know the pinch points, you know, when we really have to up the prep and give a period to prepare for and so on.
Same for them though.
Might not be exactly the same, but different, you know, different lawyers will prepare in different
Yeah,
ways. But
true.
yes, there are some mutual points, that's true.
Yeah,
That's
but
true.
Francesca was really expensive, you told me that before. She charges out
Outrageous.
logistics.
It's in your mutual interest, of course it is. What applies to you applies to them, maybe slightly differently. And you're a public sector agency, she's a private individual with maybe quite a lot of cash, you say. However, the mutuality here is to get this brought to a conclusion. So let's cut through this, shall we? We're going to have all sorts of discussions about the rights and wrongs of this. Can you give me some idea, Wilma, of what you think you might be able to do financially? I don't need a specific figure, but I'd like a sense of where
My
you are.
sense is, I talked about a few £1,000s for the legal fees, and
I think that
reluctant to do anything else though, because it's public money.
I think the feeling is it needs to be, I don't want to say a token, but it needs to be of that order of magnitude as opposed to a big check. It's the public perception that we're worrying about here.
You had a good idea, Petra, about the charitable donations.
Well, yes, I think you remember earlier that we were talking about perhaps the CDC and indeed the public would be more accepting of the idea that perhaps the money didn't go directly to this American that's come in and, you know, been all over the press. So perhaps we could think about some kind of, I mean, let's think of a positive PR of maybe a gesture.
Yeah, she was so enthusiastic about, you know, the work of the agency, so maybe there's a
Yeah.
project
I mean,
that we could.
you've been talking about the rewilding project that the CDA were getting involved in, so there's maybe something there.
You almost think you'd been listening into what we discussed. I wish it was so easy normally.
We
So-
generally did discuss that in our previous
Isn't that
meeting.
interesting? Yeah, so, well, that is interesting and helpful. And of course, you know Joanne Grimm, and you know what she thinks and how she thinks about things. Can I just then come back to the legal expenses? I'm authorised to say to you that they are in the region of £7,000 to £10,000. And you need to know that, because that is what she feels entitled to in terms of recovering what should be on the pocket of, in addition to whatever else is done.
That much money.
But it is what it is, and
Can I just clarify, are you saying that she's looking for £7,000 to £10,000 in relation to her legal fees?
that's it.
That's not all she's looking for.
That's all she's looking for.
Uh-huh.
And my impression is that in order to help this go away, while her claim was over the 125, whatever it was earlier in the day, that something of the order of a five-figure payment will be needed. But my sense is it will be in the low tens, and you know, maybe something at a 2 or whatever. But that's the territory. There's no point in beating about the bush. You know, I want you to face up to that in a sense, against the benchmark of what will happen if you don't. Appreciate all business and audit and scrutiny and so forth. So you have to have a rational justification for doing what you're doing, and you have to be able to sell this to the outside constituency. I get that. So when you think about what sometimes is called victory speech, how do you show that this was value for money? But that's somewhere Emma can help you. Emma classically, I suppose, will write you a note about this and say why, whatever you do. But on the other hand, well, it's your show. So you can decide to do whatever you decide to do. I'm just here to help you. So there's an opportunity here if you wish. The question is how to take it. Now, what's interesting about what you say is that there may be something in this charitable
Okay.
thing. There may be something even in some further, I don't know, some further work you might be able to do together. It's really not for me, I think, to be involved with that. I think you might need to have a conversation about that. But I think I need to be able to convey a sense of, broadly speaking now, what you can do on the money side.
So I think on the legal fees, that's significantly higher than I had in mind. That's interesting if we possibly get some mutual ground on some sort of charitable work, and I think that's something maybe we could discuss. It would certainly feed really nicely into this press release we put together, and I do think I'll be able to sell that one up the chain more
And of course, it is
successfully.
worth bearing in mind that whatever we do agree, other than a press release and anything that we want to get into the public, the detail of what we agree will be entirely private. So, you know, that would be an important aspect, that if anything was paid towards legal fees, that just is between us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then anything that we want to shout out about, we can.
Yeah, and I'm not going to comment on that because that's your domain, not mine.
Yeah.
I don't do that. So I think there's things we can think about there. And I've planted some seeds for you about the territory that you may be in. There's obviously potential for quite a creative approach to all of this. However, you will need to, if I may say so, face up to the reality of aspects of the financial play. And if you can put this to bed, think about the benefits of doing so. Even if it means taking responsibility for a decision that might seem a little bit painful at the moment, think about the consequences of not doing so.
Okay.
Right. So I think I'm going to leave you just to have a chat about these things between you, and then we'll take stock. I'll come back and see you maybe in